Welcome to the Voices of the Goddess podcast. We believe that there is a goddess inside each and every one of us. When we use our voice to share that goddess, we support and uplift each other. Join us each week as we interview women to receive the message of their goddess within. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they were meant to be. I'm Julietta, the Magical PT, one of your co-hosts. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I'm a Midwestern girl. I am a entrepreneur. I am a physical therapist that has my own clinic. It's a very outside the box physical therapy practice. And I treat body, mind, and spirit. So if you're just looking at the body, you're missing a whole bunch of stuff that your body needs to heal. So we got to look at the whole thing. And I'm also a podcaster, an artist, a jeweler. I always make the joke, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I don't do any of those things, but anyway.
It sounds so good when you do it.
I got to come up with something else for that. But anyway, that's me in a nutshell. Who are you, Allison?
My name is Allison Mancini, and I am also living here in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area. I've been here for 28 years, but originally from Michigan, so a Michigan girl at heart, and married to my wonderful husband for 28 years. We have two adult children, a 25 and 22-year-old, and I am a human resources director for an amazing company, and I'm also a functional nutritionist, and that is really my passion, is just helping women stay well through their nutrition. And I'm a co-host of this awesome podcast, and I get to meet all these amazing goddesses, so it's awesome. And I have a puppy chewing on my sleeve of my shirt right now, so we're just rolling with it.
That's what we do here. We roll.
That's right.
So talk to me, Allison. You said you practice functional nutrition. I think a lot of people out there don't really understand what that means. So can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I agree. And it definitely wasn't something that I had ever heard of 15 years ago. So actually my passion and my experience is very personal. About 15 years ago, I started getting very sick. I was in my late 30s. I had severe insomnia. I was losing weight. I couldn't eat because my throat always hurt. I always had an upset stomach. My moods were horrible. Like, you can ask my kids, they can remember. I've told this story before, but I one time remember being so angry at them. And like, have you ever been that angry where it's like all you can see is red? That we were at a red light. I had to get out of the car and stand outside the car while the kids were in the car at the red light because I was afraid of what I would say or do. That's how extreme my moods would get. So anyways, I went through the traditional, I was having insomnia and I was having stomach problems. So I did the traditional. I went to my general physician. Then from there, I went to gastroenterologist, and I did a psychiatrist, and I did an endocrinologist, because maybe it was hormone related. I went through all the avenues, and every stop I made, they were scratching their heads and they were prescribing me different medications to treat the actual symptom that I had going on. But what was happening was I was piling all these medications on, and I was starting to have all these other effects, which was making everything, it was just a vicious cycle. It was terrible. And I was even at a cardiologist because I thought I had a major heart condition. It was so terrible. Julietta, it was like no person, like how you know me is nothing. You would have met me back then and be like, this woman's out of her mind. And I really thought I was going out of my mind because I knew these things were happening in my body, but I would go to these doctors and they'd be like, nothing's wrong with you. Like, you're totally fine. Nothing was coming back like majorly wrong. So we have a very good friend who is in functional medicine, though at the time we didn't understand that that's what he did. We knew he was doing natural medicine of some sort. So my husband reached out to him and said, something's really wrong with Allison. Like, no one can figure it out. She's not getting better. She's getting worse. And we don't know what to do. And he's like, oh, you need to come to my office. So long story short, I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor. And it was really incredible because functional medicine looks at the function of your body. That's the best way to look at it. They look at the body as a whole, and they know that if everything is functioning at its optimum level, everything works together and it works amazing. Our bodies are miracles. If they have what they need, they are able to do everything that they need to do, and they can function exactly how they need to be. So he did some, most functional medicine doctors will go through some baseline, tests. They'll, they spend a lot of time with you. They do a very thorough, as far as like conversation and just outward physical exam, and then did my fun, a fun poop test. I mean, it's a lot of TMI, but listen, your poop tells a lot about you. So, did a poop test, did blood work. And then one of the things that they checked based on some of the things I was having going on was my cortisol levels. So everything came back, and it turned out that I had overgrowth of bacteria, had an overgrowth of yeast in my stomach, in my gut. I had my cortisol levels, were like non-existent. Like most people in the morning, like your cortisol levels should like slowly rise, and then they just kind of go down. Mine like went blip and then did like nothing. So I had like my adrenals were almost non-functioning. I was a hot mess. And people always say to me, well, I don't understand how you got that way. Well, I got that way over a long span of time. It was a long period of time of poor lifestyle choices, eating foods that I didn't understand were actually damaging my body long-term, like gluten and dairy for me particularly, things that I just didn't understand. And so I'll never forget, I sat in front of this functional medicine doctor and I'm like, okay, so like, what's my diagnosis, right? Because we all want to diagnose, we got to know what we have, right? And I said, what's my diagnosis? And he's like, we don't really give diagnoses. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I got to have some kind of a diagnosis. He's like, well, if it makes you feel better, your adrenals pretty much are not working. And let's just put that in a nutshell. And I'm like, oh, okay. And at the time, because, people want to know, well, what's wrong with you? So I would say, well, my adrenals just aren't working. Like that was the best answer I could give. But I understand now what he was saying. Like we had to make sure everything was working and functioning properly. And then miraculously, my body would do just fine. So it did take time. It's not a quick fix. It took me a couple of years to really get back to myself. But now I completely get it. And I am 100% believer in functional medicine and functional nutrition, and understanding that when we get our body working to their best ability, they will amazingly work exactly how they need to work. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And that's my little story.
It's your story and you're sticking to it.
And I'm sticking to it. And so that's why I'm passionate. I'm passionate because I know, and I went through myself what it's like when you don't take care of yourself. I was very stressed out. I had 2 small children. One of them had a lot of medical issues. I was all over the place. Yep. And then, yes. And Dr. Wendy, yes. And then when you add menopause to that can not help too. So it's all these different things. So yeah, it was interesting. So I still work with a functional medicine doctor to this day. And I still see them on a somewhat regular basis, but yeah. And just really because I want to stay at my optimum best self. So that's it.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Well, before we bring in our guest, I have to talk about our sponsor.
Who's amazing.
So great to have sponsors. Our sponsor right now is Graciela Valdez, Fine Art Photography. She is an award-winning, published, and professionally certified portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding. She creates custom and concierge portrait experiences that are transformative and life-affirming. Whether it's an intimate portrait honoring your highest self or a professional engaging portrait for your business, she makes pictures of who you are, not just what you look like. So I've experienced both the boudoir and personal branding, and absolutely the whole thing is an experience. It's not, you're just not just going there to get your picture taken, but you end up, as a person, I've always hated having my picture taken. I love going and having my picture taken by Graciela. She just makes you feel so good, and her work is phenomenal. So if you need pictures done, call our girl, Graciela Valdez. So it's time to bring on our guest. You're muted. I can't hear you, Allison. But
you're right, because I was trying not to let the dog ripping my chair everybody to hear, though we can let everyone hear that.
So welcome, Leah.
Hi, Leah.
Thank you for coming to our show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Leah McQuade, and I'm a master coach, embodiment expert, yoga teacher, and breathwork facilitator. And my passion is really helping women tap into the wisdom and the intuition of their body so they can find more freedom, pleasure, peace, and joy in their lives.
Beautiful. Love that. Because we all need that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So our first question for you is, what is one book that you wish every goddess would read and why?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much because I love to read. I love to read. And so when I was looking at the questions, kind of preparing a little bit, thinking, I had a million books that I wanted to tell you all, but I was like, yeah, I know. It's a good idea to just go ahead and narrow it down to one. You guys didn't ask me about 10. You asked me about one. So yeah, the one book right now, and I say right now because this changes as we evolve, as we grow, as we transform, as that book magically falls off the shelf right in front of us that we need to read, right? Like different circumstances in life will bring different books into our lives, right? Right now, I got to tell you, The Wild Woman's Way by Michaela Boehm is my Bible. It's been such a gift to me. It's one of those books that has informed my work and is a book that is not only a resource for me in my own life, but I find that this book has a influence in how I coach, because this book is such a beautiful book about women's embodiment and the full spectrum woman, right? And what it's like to feel embodied and the practices that we can engage in to really begin to live from the inside out, because essentially that's what embodiment means, living from the inside out from a real general standpoint. But this book for me has been so meaningful because it's really not only impacted my own life and helped me really start to look at how to get out of the mind and into the body. And what happens when we're in the mind all the time, because this book really dives into that, but it also dives into what it's like to be a full spectrum woman, right? What it's like to go through our different phases in life and how we can really step into our potential in each of the phases, and also the challenges, right? So she's really honest in this book about the challenges we face as women. So this book has really changed my life in a lot of ways, and it's something that I love to teach. I teach it in my Facebook group, Free Your Wild, and have created other book clubs around it. And yeah, I just love it. It's really a beautiful book, and I think a lot of women would get a lot out of it, especially women who are really looking to embody more of the goddess, right? More of that intuition and wisdom that we all have, to really start to embody that and bring the goddess out in our everyday life. This is the perfect book.
And I love that you say that, because we've had people that I've asked to be guests on the show, and I can't be on your show. I'm not a goddess. And I explained to them that the goddess lives in every single one of us. It's just whether you've identified her and are willing to be open to her and let her come out. But every single woman has this goddess inside that's intuitive and powerful and can make anything happen. So yeah.
Yes. And this is why the embodiment work that I do and have found so profound in my own healing journey and transformation is is so powerful. This is why it's so powerful, because that goddess that lives within you is a way of being. And we have to slow down the mind, get into the body, and really live from that place, which takes a lot of removing of the programming, right? Because we're programmed to be a certain way in this world, especially as women, but also just in culture at large, right? The feminine way of being, of intuition and deep listening and love and trust and community, all of the things that really represent the goddess, right? That isn't necessarily valued, I should say, in our society. So it's about pulling back some of those conditioned beliefs around having to succeed and do all of the to-do lists. And it's really pulling a lot of that back and taking moments to drop in and really listen deeply.
Love that. All right. Let's move on to question number 2, which is, what is your favorite self-care practice and how does that support you?
Yeah, so I have many, many, many self-care practices. And what I have found to be really beneficial for me personally is having that toolbox, right? Or having those tools that have been practiced, that I can reach into that tool bag and grab when I need them. However, I will say that when I first started this journey, meditation was by far the most profound, because it's really the foundation for everything that we build upon after that. And now meditation, I don't necessarily mean, I make this joke all the time, right? Meditation doesn't necessarily mean sitting in a dark cave in India for 8 hours, right? And we have this mindset sometimes around meditation being really hard. And really, in my mind, meditation is just giving yourself some space to drop in and to listen to what's going on in your body and in your mind. And so I have to say that although I have a lot of practices, meditation or stillness practice or mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, is by far the most important and always my go-to. And oftentimes I'll start there and then drop in and really ask myself, what is it that I need? And in this moment. And sometimes it is just that stillness practice. And then other times it'll change. It might be more of a movement-based practice, or it might be all of the things, right? It might be pulling an oracle card. It is more so now lately for me, it's about dropping into the goddess Kali too. So that's my new thing as well, self-care practice. So I think of it more of this idea of like radical self-care. You know, baths are great, don't get me wrong. But I think of self-care, I take it up just a notch so we can really understand ourselves. And meditation by far is the best.
Well, and I love it too, that because so often people think that meditation is sitting cross-legged on the floor with your hands in a certain position, and meditation can look different for every single person, and you can choose your way and you can choose a different way tomorrow. Like meditation, there's no absolute one-way recipe for meditation. It can be so many different things. So I think we can't emphasize that enough to people, because so many people stay away from it because they think that they have to, like I said, sit on the floor with their legs crossed and contemplate their belly button. But it can be so many things for so many people.
Yes, absolutely. And giving yourself that freedom to flow with the type of practice you need in the moment is really important. The discipline side is important for a lot of people as well. So that can be important. But for me, what I have found is really that listening deeply to what I need in the moment and then honoring that. And then the only way to really listen deeply is slowing down, doing the mindfulness, meditation practices, the stillness practices. It's the only way to really hear what's coming through and what you need to do next, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. We're fans of meditating for sure. So our next question is, when you're having one of those days when it's difficult to show up, what tool do you pull out of your back pocket to make it happen? Yeah,
so I've already mentioned this several times. I'm going to mention it again, listening deeply, right? So sometimes it's not always about showing up. Like sometimes it's really important to actually cancel things, and I think, and I don't mean canceling in like a, like, oh, I just don't feel like doing this today sort of way, but I mean really deeply listening. Like, and I think these last 2 years with the pandemic have really taught us that it's okay to nourish ourselves. It's okay to say no. It's okay to not push. So for me, it's really listening deeply. If I'm not feeling like I really want to show up, I listen. And is this just me being lazy? Or is this really me, my body trying to talk to me and telling me, you need rest, Leah, right? Or you need to process this thing that's blocking you from really showing up fully. And then the other thing is, the other thing, this is important. I really feel like this is important, right? When you do show up and you're not 100%, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be like, yeah, no, I'm here. I made it, but I am feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. This thing happened to me this morning and I haven't had a chance to process it. I mean, it's okay. I think for so many of us women, we put on those masks. We pretend everything's fine. We're, supposed to be the good girls that don't have an opinion, that don't get angry, that always smile, like all the things that we're kind of told that we're supposed to be. And so when we actually show up and be like, I'm not okay today, but I'm here, like that's okay to do as well. So yeah, it's.
I really appreciate you saying that. That was something that I was always really hard on myself. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer here that my puppy is literally chewing on my green screen behind me. So if everything topples over suddenly, you know why. So that's one of our things here is we show up perfectly imperfect. And there you go. But one of the things that I think was really helpful to me a few years ago, and for those of you that are out here listening, is exactly what Leah just said. Like, it's okay to have those days where you just feel like you can't do it. Like, that's okay. And it's also okay to have those days where you're not 100% and you're there, but you're just not 100%. Like, today I'm feeling like one of those days. Like, I've got a lot going on behind me. I am not 100% myself with all this going on behind me, but I'm here because I love what I do. I'm passionate about helping women, and this is what we're all here for. So I thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's, if I would have learned that lesson in my 20s, I think that would have been so helpful to me in so many scenarios as I grew up. So I appreciate that a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, all of these things. Why couldn't I have learned this earlier? But it's all good. We learn it when we're supposed to learn it. So it's all good.
So I'm going to take a picture of what my green screen looks like right now behind me. And we're going to just post it in our Facebook group later so everyone can see what was going on behind me. It's hysterical. You guys would die if you could see it.
Actually, those that are listening that don't know, our Facebook group is called Circle of Goddesses. So if you're not a member of our group, find us and join us and check out the funny pictures that we're going to post there. But we got to also get on to our final question, which is, what life experience that you've had, and it's like, yes, everything forms and shapes who we are. But what is the one big experience that you think has most formed who you are today?
Yeah, I love this question as well. And I just have to say real quick that Allison, when you were telling your story, that is my story as well. So familiar to me. All of the symptoms that creeped up from the stress, from the overwhelm, from the not taking care of yourself, from pushing too hard, from hustling, and going to see all the doctors. I too had to get a cardiologist to check my heart because I was having heart palpitations at the age of, 28, 29. And then the depression and anxiety were big for me, and the adrenals not working. And same thing, I went to a chiropractor, was one of my first kind of holistic health stops. And she was the first one to tell me do you think maybe you're stressed? And I was like, I don't know what stress is. I had just lived that way for so long that I had no idea what stress was and what it felt like in the body. So this is another reason why I really love the embodiment work, is because your body will give you signals. It's just, we're so busy and we're pushing all the time and we're hustling and we don't slow down enough to listen to the signals of our body. And so I wanted to just mention how common I think your story really is, because it really resonated with me as well. And in going down the more functional path to find healing and to find relief from the symptoms is the way to go. It's getting to the root cause.
Very common. The more and more women I talk to, I hear it all the time. And I love how you brought that up about the stress. And I think this is part of what you do, is that we don't realize, because when we get in that constant state of stress, we don't even know what it's like to not feel stressed. So we don't even realize that what we're feeling is actual, like we're just stressed out all the time. Like you just don't even know. So yeah.
So I'll say that this is this experience that I had, this health journey, was one of the biggest and more profound experiences in my life. And I will say that because it's these health challenges that really led me back to meditation, talking about the core principles and foundations of embodiment and self-care. And my story really changed at that moment. I had studied meditation the very first time that I hit rock bottom, when I was getting my master's degrees in college. And I was lucky enough to experience meditation as a way to heal. At that time was more anxiety and depression. And then I lost that. I don't know if lost is the right word. Our lives ebb and flow, and my life was flowing in a very different direction. And I got completely away from the meditation and the mindfulness practices that I had learned in college. And so naturally, I started to get into more the stress and the overwhelm, and for years and years and years, and it just started to really pile up on top of each other. And it wasn't until I was sitting in my meditation room on my meditation cushion, because I had just introduced it back into my life, and I had introduced yoga in a deeper way into my life. And I was sitting on that meditation cushion, and I realized I have really everything that I wanted. I was getting ready to travel the world with my husband. I was had this great relationship with my husband. I had this job that was no longer fulfilling, but I was getting ready to quit this job and travel the world. Like really, I had a lot going on for me, but yet there was still this restlessness inside. So with the meditation and the yoga, I was able to find some relief from the stress and really find some safety in my body. So I was able to calm the nervous system down enough so it didn't feel so revved up in that fight, flight, or freeze that I had been in for years and years and years, which is what makes the adrenals fatigued, right? And that constant flow of cortisol pumping into your system from the fight, flight, or freeze response of the nervous system. So I was really feeling safety enough in the body to take my healing to another level. And that's when I really reached out and sought some support from a therapist, and we worked on some trauma that I had as a little girl. And that right there, that moment on my meditation cushion in that meditation room, changed my life forever, because it set me on this path to transformation, this path to feeling whole again. After having so many health challenges and mental health and physical challenges. And so it was that moment, sitting on that meditation cushion in that meditation room, that really changed my life.
I love that.
You looked like you had something to say. That's why I was pausing. Anyway, all right. Great story, and I think also just so important, because so many times people feel like they're the only one out there going through what they're going through, and the truth is you're never the only one going through what you're experiencing. I mean, yes, everybody's experience is unique, but the more we share and the more open we are, the more we can all support each other, because yeah, so many have been through similar experiences. So thank you for sharing that, Leah.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Our final question is always, if there was one thing that our audience would take away from this episode, what would you want that to be?
I would have to say to not be afraid to listen to the body, because I think sometimes we can have experiences in our life that doesn't make it feel safe to be in the body, and that being in the body is actually where the healing is. And the deeper we can find safety within our bodies, and the deeper we can go within and trust the wisdom and the intuition within, the more we'll find that vibrant life that we're all searching for, that we'll tap into our potential, that we'll be able to create this life that we love. So it's really all about embodiment and finding the courage to step into new layers of understanding ourselves from the inside out, and not being afraid to reach out for support, because there's lots of amazing women supporting other amazing women out there. And so not being afraid to really go there and reach out for support.
So true. So true.
I feel like that's kind of been a running theme today, like, really listening to yourself, right? And stepping into, what you're, however you look at it, you're passionate about, and really, I think you make such a good point, Leah. I think we just really need to listen to our own bodies and listen to that instinct, and that, I call it that gut feeling. Everybody calls it, different things, but I think that's really, really important.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Leah. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I also want to say a big thank you out there to our sponsor, Graciela Valdez Fine Art Photography. And thank you to our listeners, because you are why we do this. Mm-hmm. And if you like what you hear, please like, follow, subscribe, and share this with other women out there, because we know that the tips, the messages that come through, they are so helpful for so many people. So please share it out there. And if you need to get a hold of Leah, Allison, or myself, please check the show notes. All of our contact information is in there, and where to find us on social media and all that good stuff. So it's been great having you, Leah, and I want to wish everybody out there a magical day.
Thank you, Leah. This was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.